Hey everybody, this is Untitled Chapter, what Kai talks about. In this video, I'll be showing you guys the tips and tricks for taking care of your superworms, your waxworms, as well as your crickets. So, first things first, hi guys, because I can tell you guys can see me in the reflection. But without further ado, I have a bug breeder program get started up. As you guys can see, I will talk about the electronics portion later, but first let's get into the care. So as stated before, I'm working on a bug breeder project. It's going to be for my ants. I have, as of right now, I have Lasius niger, Lasius flavus, and Formica fusca ants. And my intention is to go ahead and have them um, fed. And by feeding them, I'm going to feed them, of course, the crickets, waxworms, superworms. But instead of having to consistently buy them from the store, I decided to start my own breeding project so I can A, save money, and B, learn something new about bug care. So the first thing is the substrate. So if you look real close, you guys can see the substrate that I'm using is actually Quaker oats. You may you can see some of the superworms here. It's really cool. But yeah, this is what you can find at Sam's Club, Walmart, any place like that. And what the substrate serves as is basically like artificial soil. So the bugs will dig into it, they'll rest in it until nightfall, which would just be when you turn the lights off during the nighttime. And then they'll crawl out and do their business. It doesn't smell at all, honestly. I do have a ventilation hole at the top of the tank, which you may be able to see. Actually, you can't really see it here, but you can see it here in the waxworm enclosure. It's a lot easier to see. So right here, I have two ventilation holes. Actually, one is for my finger to go through so I can lift it up, and the other is just the larger one is the larger ventilation hole. That little tick you heard was the relay, but we'll get to that shortly. So what you want to do is feed them apples, fruits. I feed them pears. I fed them bananas, apples, tomatoes. A lot of folks say that they'll just eat the substrate since it's all edible. I have actually found that they will not eat it. They just treat it as normal soil. They don't eat it at all. And I had to learn that the hard way because from following that advice, I actually had a massive die-off. All of my colonies all died because I thought they were going to just eat the substrate. They won't. So I feed them once a week. The frequency should be no more than once a week. I noticed that if I feed them more often, that they'll just let the food sit there, which would make it go bad, which is just a waste. And if you feed them every 2 weeks or so, they get very hungry, like ravenous. One time, I actually decided to wait 2 weeks to feed them and see how they would respond so I can get a good feeding frequency. And the second I laid down the food, they were swarming all over it. So I don't want them to be in any excess pain, have any issues or whatnot. So once a week is actually pretty good for them, for all of them, the crickets as well as the superworms. I don't really talk about the waxworms much, and that's for the simple fact that they metamorphize pretty quickly. I actually had these for about a couple weeks. They just all started metamorphizing. They are turning like a brown color. Some of them are dead, unfortunately, but just ignore the probe. But yeah, they're all metamorphizing. And in all honesty, I didn't put any special bedding for them. They just started doing their thing. The funny part is that one of the ant nurseries that I try to feed them the ants, my Formica fuscas, a waxworm, and they didn't want to eat it for whatever reason. So I thought the waxworm died because it just was sitting still. I came back a day or two later and it started to metamorphose, and I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. It's turning into a moth surrounded by predators. That was actually quite funny to me. So The waxworms you really don't need to worry about too much because they tend to go through metamorphosis pretty quickly. Your waxworms, not your waxworms, sorry, your superworms and your crickets are the ones you really should be paying the most attention to. As far as the fruits here, you can see I actually have apple slices, and I'll keep them there for about an extra day or two. I feed them once a week, like I said before. Once they start shriveling up, that's when I normally just take it out. Don't want the apples to go bad, start getting fungus and whatnot, because last thing I need is a fungus infestation that kills my superworms. And it's just a bad investment if I were to have all these superworms and then keep the apples there for a while and give it enough time to rot. So then everything dies again, this time due to fungal infection instead of starvation. All right, so now we're going to move on to the crickets. Now, the only thing special you need for the crickets are this bin. It's just this bin. As you can see, it's just it's covered with a mesh screen, and it also has a rubber band around it. I'm actually going to change the setup because if they're just going to be in the soil, I might as well just keep them there. So what I'll do is clear out that excess substrate, and then I'll just fill half of it with soil. And when I take the crickets out of their containers, they'll just sit there, they'll breed, they'll eat, they'll do all their business. And then when they eventually die, I can just pick them up and throw them away, throw it in a compost bin, and call it a day. But as of right now, since I already know there are eggs in there, what I'm going to do is hook up a bug breeder system on this the cricket enclosure. And then from there, I'm going to have this breeder, this other bug breeder here for the crickets. So this is going to be where that bin that you just saw goes into, and that'll be the breeding for the smaller crickets. And then I'll have another set of adult crickets in this big container, and then I'll just go back and forth. Once both bins are filled with a sufficient amount of little crickets, then I'll just have both of them set as the baby cricket breeder, and there would be no point to really swap them out because both containers will be filled, and I'll just go from there. So that's really it as far as the care. Is pretty straightforward. Doesn't require a lot of effort, honestly. The biggest thing now is discussing this control module. Now, I know I have a lot of wires everywhere, and I will clean that up in a little bit. Right now, I'm just making sure that everything works, and it actually works pretty well. But I'll get to the wire cleanup later. In any case, the bug breeder. Right here, I have a mesh screen for the waxworms. In that sense, they're going to turn into moths. I don't need them getting into that heat lamp, which can hit an excess of 200 degrees. So I don't need instant kills. I actually have enclosures for the Elegoo Nanos, which are the generic Arduinos that you guys know and love so well. It's a lot cheaper, and it does the same exact thing. It's just made by a different company, and the price is a lot lower by about half. So I like to keep the enclosures off. Here's one right here. I like to keep the enclosures off so that if I need to do any updates or I need to monitor it to verify it works properly, I don't like having to take all of those wires off and putting them back in. So I just keep them all off. So I actually have this little probe hanging off both of the enclosures. Here's one here, and here's one for the waxworms. This is actually it's a DS18B20, and it's just a temperature module. I find that I prefer it more than the DHT22 because the look is a lot more sleek, and it's actually a lot cheaper than buying a DHT22. The DHT22 tends to cost around $8-9 a piece, whereas you can get about 5 DS18B20s for the same price, roughly. And you don't require like an enclosure. For example, let me show you guys an enclosure I made with the DHT22. So here's an enclosure that I made for the DHT22. Actually, looks pretty good. It got messed up a little bit from the drill press, but that's fine. And it actually was pretty sleek. I liked it a lot. Only problem was that I couldn't get an accurate temperature reading. which is why I also have these DS18B20s and hanging in the middle of the enclosure. So what I found is that if I have the sensor against the wall, it'll actually cause an error in the temperature reading. Because the wall is very cool, it has like a little bit of cool air around it, and that causes a false reading. And it's off by about, I found, between 5 and 15 degrees, which is very significant when you're trying to maintain these bugs, because on the wall, when the sensor's on the wall, the temperature can be around 74, 75-ish degrees, but the actual air temperature is around 90. So that is very significant. There's no point in having them on the side, because though it looks better, you could potentially kill your entire colony of worms, and that's simply unnecessary, and that's something that cannot be allowed at all. So what I decided to do is just have it hanging in the center. It doesn't look as good, but at least I know my entire colony will be alive. That's really about it. So how it works is the Elegoo Nano will take the temperature reading from the DS18B20. And if the temperature is below a certain threshold, I have it set at if the temperature is 75 degrees or lower, that it will activate the relay, which is the 16-channel relay right here. And that will close the circuit for the heat lamp. And then once that circuit is closed, it'll start heating it up, and the temperature will increase to about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. And once it hits or exceeds 85 degrees Fahrenheit, the relay is turned off and the entire enclosure cools down. I also have this ventilation hole so that the hot air can get out and they can get some fresh air, because there's no point in having a fully sealed system. There's absolutely no point, because the air just gets stagnant, and you want that good, heat air exchange. So that's why I have it set up how I do. So I only need to make two more bug breeder systems, one for the crickets and another for the cricket the cricket nursery. So basically the small and large container for the crickets. But beyond that, that's about everything I have. I'd like to let you guys know that I actually have an Instagram account now called Kite Talks About. That's the name of it. So if you guys want to give me a follow, that'd be great. For those of you who actually do follow, you guys are pretty aware that I already made this bug breeder system, because I posted the entire process of me making it, different little things about it and whatnot. So if you want to get daily updates from me, follow my Instagram account, Kite Talks About. I also have a blog now, blogspot account, so it'll be kitetalksaboutelectronics.blogger.com. Blogspot.com. I apologize for that. So I post on there every couple days. I try to make a post. So with me getting into this project and learning how to do it, since it has a bit of a learning curve, I took a break from it so that I could focus on this, as well as the formicarium nursery that I am almost done with. Actually, after posting this video, I'll actually have I'll put in the finishing touches for the formicarium nursery, because I came up with some nice developments that I'm quite proud of. So I'll have that done shortly. Again, if you follow, there goes the tick. So the relay just activated. I believe it's the second one now. So this enclosure's heat lamp just activated because the temperature is at or below 75 degrees. So what it's going to do is heat up to 85 degrees, then it's going to turn off, and now give it time for the enclosure's temperature to stabilize, and then eventually it's going to go back down. Once it's 75 again, it'll just bump it back up to 85. So everybody, that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends, and follow me on my social media accounts. First one will be kitetalksaboutelectronics.blogspot.com, and my Instagram account, which is Kite Talks About. So without further ado, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later. Have a very blessed day and happy Monday.